He wore a $30,000 suit, stepped out of a black armored Bentley, and was once named Forbes' youngest tech tycoon. But on this particular morning, drenched in sweat and dust, barefoot and bleeding from the forehead, he collapsed on a dirt roadside like a common man, unrecognizable, broken, and ignored. She was no one. A poor bread seller with cracked heels, faded clothes, and arms full of unsold loaves, struggling to feed her siblings after their parents' death. She had no reason to stop for the stranger who looked like a madman and smelled like danger. But she did. And when he begged her not to leave him, when he gripped her wrist like his life depended on it, she didn't know he was the man whose face had once covered Times Square. Why was a billionaire lying half dead in the slums? Why did he refuse to reveal his identity? And what did this humble bread seller do that changed both their lives forever? The Lagos sun was brutal that afternoon. The air shimmered with heat waves, dust choked the streets, and even the goats had retreated into shadows. But Miriam had no such luxury. A tray stacked with steaming loaves balanced on her head, and the chorus of her soft voice. Bread, hot bread, competed with the honks of angry motorists and market women haggling over peppers. She hadn't eaten all day. Every step she took sent a sting through the blister on her left heel. Still, she walked. Not just for herself, but for her younger brothers waiting back home, their eyes always hungry and hopeful. As she crossed the pothole-riddled road into the poorer part of the district, her eyes caught something strange. A man stumbling near the gutter. Not just any man. He was barefoot, shirt torn at the shoulder, trousers stained with mud and dried blood. His face was swollen, as if he'd been beaten. He wobbled as if each step was a war. And then, right in front of her, he collapsed face first onto the pavement. People stared but walked past. No one wanted trouble. Miriam hesitated. Her heart thudded, and instinct told her to walk on. Bread could not sell itself. But something in his eyes, when they flickered up to meet hers, held her there. Desperation, like a drowning man clinging to the last plank in a storm. She stepped closer. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked, kneeling beside him, setting her tray aside. His lips cracked open. Don't leave me. Please. I won't." She didn't even realize she'd said it. He reached for her wrist, cold fingers trembling. "No hospitals, no police, just help me." "Why?" she asked quietly. His silence was eerie, loaded. His eyes rolled slightly and he passed out. Miriam glanced around. No one cared. To them, he was just another addict or madman, another fallen ghost on a street full of silent stories. But she couldn't walk away. She didn't know why. Maybe it was his voice. Maybe it was how he didn't beg for money, only to be seen. She grabbed his arm and pulled. He was heavier than he looked, but she'd carried water buckets for years. What was one more burden? With a grunt and fierce determination, she half dragged, half supported him to the wooden stall nearby where she usually rested. She tore a piece of cloth from the hem of her wrapper, dipped it into her drinking water, and cleaned the cut on his forehead. His breathing slowed. She sat beside him, shielding his head from the sun with her tray. Customers passed by. She lost sales. But somehow, none of it mattered. Because in that moment she didn't know that the man she was helping was Tunde Cole, Africa's youngest billionaire tech mogul. A man who, just 24 hours ago, had disappeared without a trace after a massive betrayal from inside his own empire. But that revelation would come later. For now, Miriam only saw a man in pain. And she had bread. And heart. To give. By evening, the man was breathing better. His fever had gone down thanks to the wet rag Miriam kept pressing to his forehead. He hadn't said much, only short gasps of water and sleep. But she noticed the way his hand clenched tightly when she mentioned calling for help. It was strange. Who didn't want help? As the orange sun dipped below the rooftops, casting long shadows over the tin roofs, Miriam sat beside him, chewing on a piece of dry bread to hush her stomach. Her tray was almost full. She'd sold only 2 loaves since she stopped. Another day of hunger, another night explaining to her brothers why. Still, she stayed. Suddenly the man stirred. Where am I?" he croaked, blinking rapidly. "You're safe," she whispered. "I found you on the street. You fainted." His eyes darted around like a trapped animal. "Did anyone follow me?" "No," she said cautiously. "Why would someone be following you?" He looked at her, confused, dazed, then shook his head slightly. "I don't know. I can't go to the police. Don't let them find me." "You haven't even told me your name," she said, gently curious. He hesitated. A full second passed, then another. "Coyote," he finally said. It was a lie. She didn't know it yet, but Coyote was the name he used when he wanted to disappear. Only 2 people in the world knew he used it, and both had betrayed him in the past 48 hours. "Okay, Coyote," she replied. "Do you want to tell me what happened to you?" He glanced away. His knuckles whitened as he clenched his fist. "I was robbed. That's all." She didn't believe him, but she also didn't press. "You look like someone important," she said. "Even with blood on your face, your skin smells like designer soap." He almost laughed, and that surprised them both. "Is that your way of calling me soft?" "No," she said seriously. "It's my way of saying you're not from here. People like you don't end up in slums like this unless something went very wrong." There was silence. Then he nodded. "You're right. Something went very wrong." She waited for more, but it didn't come. Instead, he looked at her tray of bread. "You sell all that every day?" "Not today," she sighed. "You happened." A beat. He reached slowly into his pocket, then flinched. Empty. Of course. They took everything. Phone, wallet, his gold wristwatch worth more than her entire lifetime. He wasn't just broke, he was naked in the eyes of the world. "I'll pay you back," he said quietly. "Everything. I promise." "I didn't ask you to," she replied, and it hit him hard, harder than any business betrayal he'd ever faced. This woman, dusty and weary, gave without expecting return. She'd saved him from the gutter, shared her water, shielded him from the sun, and asked for nothing. He turned to look at her fully now. For the first time, Tande Cole, Africa's untouchable billionaire, saw not just a girl, but a light. He just didn't know yet how much she would come to mean. 3 days passed. Tunde stayed hidden in Miriam's tiny one-room shack tucked behind the mechanic yard. The mattress was thin, the fan worked only when Nepa blessed them with light, and the mosquitoes attacked like trained soldiers. But he didn't complain. He couldn't. Miriam let him stay without questions. Her brothers, little Ibrahim and Ahmed, thought he was a teacher who lost his way, and that story seemed easier than the truth. Their guest was the billionaire genius whose face had been on tech magazines and billboards just days ago. Each night, Miriam returned late from hawking bread, her tray lighter, her eyes heavier. Yet she never failed to bring him food, even if it meant she didn't eat much herself. She treated him like someone important long before she ever knew who he really was. On the 4th evening, Tunde finally spoke. "Miriam, I lied." She paused, halfway through feeding her brothers. "I'm not Coyote. That's just a name I use when I don't want to be found." She raised an eyebrow. "So who are you, really?" He hesitated, then pulled the curtain shut and whispered, Tunde Cole." The name didn't register immediately. Then her eyes widened. "The tech billionaire that disappeared," he finished. "After being betrayed by my own best friend and CFO, they framed me for embezzlement, froze my accounts, and hacked my phones. I couldn't go home. I couldn't trust anyone." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at him not with awe, but concern. "Why tell me now?" she asked quietly. "Because I trust you. It was a simple answer. But in his world, trust was rarer than diamonds. She sat in silence, processing it all. I don't want anything from you, she said finally. I need you to know that. He nodded. I already do. The silence between them deepened, but it wasn't heavy. It was warm, familiar. Then Miriam did something unexpected. She reached into the folds of her wrapper and pulled out a small tin can. She opened it and showed him the few crumpled naira notes and coins inside. My emergency savings, she said. I've been adding a little every day. I was going to use it to fix the leaking roof. He stared at her. Why are you showing me this? Because I want to lend it to you, she said. Not as a billionaire. As a man who needs help, just promise you'll pay it back when you can. Tunde blinked. No one had ever offered him money without a contract attached. No one had ever trusted him like this. His own board had turned on him the moment the scandal hit. His lawyer wouldn't return his calls. But here was Miriam, offering everything she had, not because of his wealth, but despite it. He took her hand gently, fingers trembling, eyes filled with a kind of gratitude that had nothing to do with numbers. Thank you, Miriam. And for the first time in days, she smiled. A week later, Tunde stood before the cracked mirror in Miriam's room, staring at his reflection. The bruises on his face had faded. The swelling in his lip had gone. But his eyes, those carried the weight of betrayal, humiliation, and something deeper, transformation. He wasn't the same man who'd climbed into that Bentley a week ago with a Rolex on his wrist and the world at his feet. He was freer. With Miriam's savings, he had quietly contacted his former bodyguard, Hassan, one of the few men still loyal to him. Hassan met him discreetly 2 towns away and gave him a new phone, access to a secure laptop, and just enough cash to breathe. Now, Tunde could fight back. But first, he returned to Miriam's room that evening with clean clothes, a fresh haircut, and a quiet smile. Her jaw dropped. You look like someone who belongs on a magazine cover. I've been on a few, he said with a grin. Show off, she muttered, blushing. But something between them had changed. He saw her now, not just as the girl who helped him, but as a woman with strength, a soul with dignity, a heart that gave even when it hurt. As they ate together that night, he spoke softly. Miriam, when this is all over, I want you to come with me. She blinked. Come with you where? Back to my world, back to the city. I want to give you and your brothers a better life, a real one. She stared at her plate. Tunde, don't make promises you can't keep. I never make promises I don't mean. But we're different, she said. I sell bread. You own tech companies. The world you live in, it's not mine. Maybe not, he said. But the moment you pulled me off that street, you became the only real thing in it. Her eyes welled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. You don't owe me anything. I know, he replied. But I want to owe you everything. Just then, her younger brother Ibrahim ran into the room holding a small radio. Uncle Tunde, he shouted. They said your name. You're on the news. Tunde's heart pounded. The radio crackled. Tunde Cole spotted alive in Ogun State, according to unnamed sources. Investigators now believe he may have been framed by ex-CFO Chuka Naji in the multi-billion naira fraud case. New evidence emerging from encrypted servers suggests. He switched it off. It's working, he said, standing. I need to go. Now? Yes. It's time I take my life back. Miriam stood too, her face torn between pride and fear. Will I ever see you again? He stepped closer. You were the only person who looked at me and didn't see a billionaire or a fugitive. You saw a human. I won't forget that. I'll come back. She looked up at him. I don't need you to come back rich, she whispered. Just come back real. He leaned forward and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. I promise. And then, just like he had arrived, he vanished. This time, not broken, but rebuilt. 3 months passed. The dusty streets of Mariam's neighborhood remained the same. Children kicking plastic balls, sellers yelling over each other, the scent of pepper soup, exhaust fumes, and charcoal blending into the chaos of life. But something was different now. Mariam walked with a heavier tray, not because of unsold bread, but because she'd added meat pies, soft drinks, and even puff-puffs. She had upgraded. Her business was growing. People smiled when they saw her. Her confidence had blossomed. Still, every evening she sat by the window in her one-room home and watched the sun set, wondering. No phone calls, no letters, no Tunde. Sometimes she doubted he was ever real. Maybe she had imagined it, a fevered dream in the heat of suffering. But then she'd touch the tin box under her mattress, the one where she used to keep her emergency savings. Now it held something else, a neatly folded note. I'll return, and when I do, I won't come empty-handed. Tunde, that promise, kept her hope alive. Then one afternoon, as she returned from the bakery with 2 sacks of fresh loaves, the neighborhood buzzed with strange whispers. Mariam! A neighbor ran toward her, panting. There's one big car waiting for you outside the mosque. Fine man say he dey fine bread seller. Mariam froze. The sacks slipped from her hands. She ran, and when she turned the corner, her breath caught. There it was, an obsidian black Range Rover polished like liquid night, parked awkwardly on the narrow road. The driver stepped out and opened the door, and there he stood. Tunde Cole. Not the man she nursed under a mosquito net, not the broken stranger with fever and secrets. This was him, the man the world had once feared and now adored, dressed in simple jeans and a white shirt, but with a quiet power in his gaze. He hadn't come with paparazzi, just with a look only she could understand. She didn't speak, couldn't. He walked up to her slowly, then held her hand in front of everyone. I told you I'd return. She finally found her voice. You kept your promise. And now I'm here to keep the next one. Behind him, a second car pulled up. Out stepped Ibrahim and Ahmed, dressed in new clothes, eyes wide with excitement. I found a house, Tunde said. A school for the boys, a bakery with your name on it. You don't have to hawk bread ever again, Mariam, unless you want to. She trembled. Why me? She whispered. You could have anyone. Because when I had nothing, you gave me everything. Tears streamed down her face. He leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. Marry me. Her lips parted. Yes, she whispered. Around them, the neighborhood erupted. Cheers, shouts. Some cried, some clapped. Kids danced around the car. A bread seller who once gave everything to a man she didn't know was now being claimed by the one man every woman dreamed of. Not for her beauty, not for her wealth, but for her soul. And as the sun dipped low and painted gold across their faces, Mariam smiled through her tears. The street girl had found her fairy tale, not in a palace, but in the heart of a man she once saved from the gutter. And in doing so, she saved herself.